order this November 8th, 2022 review session. Madam Treasurer, may we have a roll call?
President Smith,
Present.
Mrs. Reinhardt,
Present.
Mr. Sampson,
Here.
Ms. Wiegany,
Here.
Dr. Pickett,
She has an excused absence.
Dr. Goodwin,
Here.
Mr. Lacey.
Here.
6 present.
Thank you. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? As we get started, first and foremost, I see we have a lovely crowd here today. I appreciate you all being out, and I will take it that it's not here for me, but it is okay. It's okay. So for our first special presentation, I'd like to call forth the Buckeye Association of School Administrators presentation. And could the board join me down in front of the dais?
Okay, well, the good news is we'll get started now. Bad news is we'll probably be standing for a few minutes because I have a few things to say and recognition here. So my name is Dave Axter, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, and we are a superintendent's organization. We have over 900 members, and the majority of them are school superintendents. You know, in reflection today, we good? In reflection of today, I just want to say, and obviously most of you know by now with the reception that we're here to recognize Libby for being our superintendent of the year. And I will tell you, Dr. Elizabeth Lally, you are known around the state. Your accomplishments, I always kind of knew, but when I kind of researched and got ready for tonight, what a career you are having and hopefully continue to have for a long time. But as I'm here tonight, think about it in this way. We have over 600 school superintendents in our public schools. And if you add career tech centers and ESCs, we're up around 800. But tonight, there's only one that we have before us today that is the Superintendent of the Year for 2023. So it's actually a year in advance, and she will be recognized a lot of different places over the next 12 months. So as a school district, you should be proud. I will tell you, being a past superintendent in multiple districts, having a lot of your fellow colleagues that were out at the reception and some of them in here, I can tell you that it's not an easy job. And no different than being a school board member, the challenges that we've had in the last couple of years have been devastating to some districts and some individuals. And we've seen a lot of changeover in our profession, again, but also with boards. So I thank the board for their service and their opportunities that they have in leading the districts for these children. So the superintendent of the year is selected from and okay, Libby, if I refer to you that, because I know you well enough. Libby was her criteria and list of accomplishments were paired with the other nominated candidates, but is a group of her peers, and actually 7 of the past winners of this award, they're the ones that select that next superintendent of the year. So it's nothing that Dave Axner or Bassa sits around and does in a small committee. But they read those nominations, take them seriously. They're all rated, and again, you came out on top. So a few of the criteria that I think is important just to understand, and you'd think it would be a check mark on everyone in the education profession, but she was rated over the top on every one of these areas. First and foremost, meeting the needs of her students. Personal and organization communication, the improvement in administrative knowledge and skills, participation in the community, and understanding regional and national issues. Libby not only presents your district well, but when she is in Columbus, she fights not just for the students in the Dayton public, but for the students of Ohio. And I think, I know our state superintendent who commented the other day on this recognition saw it so fit in regards to some of the things she's done for the students in this district that will be modeled across the state because of the thoroughness. And I also know that she'd be the first one to recognize and thank all the administrators in this room, teaching staff, certified and classified, for making this district what it is. So a few of the things that I think, it's interesting that you work long in a career for decades and you get a plaque for saying somebody says good job. But I know that Libby feels that the accomplishment is not hers and she doesn't wear that. But I think back to when I was trying to learn how to be an assistant superintendent in Northeastern Ohio years and years ago. And I asked superintendents, who do I call to learn how to do this job? Had been a high school principal, didn't know all that, and guess who they had me call? Libby, who at the time I think was at Mayfield, and immediately didn't know me, took the call, and talked me through many situations, and my learning curve went immediately up. And can't thank you enough for that and helping me with my career, and it's so nice to see you up here tonight. You know a lot of these accomplishments. I'm going to name a few. We could be here all night. But some of the things that have not just, again, been reported and discussed here in your district and implemented, but people have taken notice around the state. So you were able to double the neighborhood school centers, opened the first school health center, almost doubled the career technical pathways, improved overall the district state report card, which is a challenge from time to time, not only because it changes every couple years, but it's never made easier. It's developed and modified at times to make it easier for parents to read and so forth. But those levels and that work that has to be done with staff continues. Implemented the program with the double teaching model that's the one that really caught the eye of many of the districts, again, not around this area, but statewide. And I can promise you that they're all trying to think of ways that they can implement the same program here. Our state superintendent, as I mentioned before, was in a meeting that mentioned how proud she was of your work here in the school district and also your leader. And you don't always hear things like that from the Ohio Department of Education, who has other things to do. So Libby's been a classroom teacher. She's been assistant principal, a principal, curriculum director, as assistant sup, and superintendent. And I think that the thing that I would say that you may talk to a seventh grader today and say, what do you want to do in your life? And people will say a teacher. Some might even want to say a principal. But I haven't talked to one superintendent, and I talked to a lot of superintendents. I've never talked to one that said, yeah, I wanted, when I was younger, I wanted to be a superintendent. And I truly believe you moved to that position because of everybody else. People know that you got something special, that you work very hard, which is exactly what she's done all the way through. I know that the things she's implemented, if you go through that list again, you'll see things that she and staff were able to do and put in place that are going to have an unbelievable effect on your children as they move through the different grades and outside of high school. So again, you can be proud. She has received other awards, and I want to just mention two because they're not easy to receive, and they are selected by those that are in the field. So she should be very proud, as your district should too. One of them is the Betsy Cowles Women's Leadership Award, and that is by a women's committee of superintendents that selects the winner. But if you look back in the history of Betsy Cowles and who she was one of the first female superintendents in the state of Ohio. And she resigned her job because they had some processes and rules in place of not letting black students attend school. So she quit. And so she was one of, would work hard and so forth, but not put up with any nonsense either. And I've always seen Libby as that kind of person that will go after something pretty hard and work hard to achieve it, but make sure it's right for our kids. The other one is the Council of, the University Council for Educational Administration. Very hard to achieve. You have to be recommended, first of all, by a college staff member, professor, dean, or so forth. And she received that, meaning that, and she's been a professor, her impact is long-lasting in regards to achievements and the things that she's got. And again, it's one of those awards that she should be very proud of. So forget about that list of stuff I know and I've read and I've seen her do. She's just a good person. And that's what I've seen when she's in committees. That's what I've seen when she's speaking in front of groups. She simply cares. I don't know a time when we were trying to make a statewide decision that Libby Lally didn't first say, was it best for our kids? It may be good for everything else. It might even save money, but is it the best for our kids? And she always brings that to the forefront. Her drive and her ethics are commendable. She volunteers for unbelievable work if it's good for students, not just Dayton Public, and she'll make that drive in when she needs to that isn't always comfortable in traffic. In the nomination, Dr. Sheila Burton. Sheila, are you here? Good to meet you. Maybe one of the, the models now that we have in regards to a nomination package. So thorough, so supported. It wasn't any fact that wasn't checked in the way that was put together. But I quote the one thing you said that rang loud again with me. In there you said, her belief that a rising tide lifts all boats. An independent thinker, visionary, she is uncompromised in her drive to see all students succeed. Is something that should be on a wall because that was said so well. Libby, with this achievement and award, we'll move on to national competition, which will be decided and announced in San Antonio, and that will be with the AASA, which is our National Administrative Council. And we wish you luck as you move forward in San Antonio. And whether you're national or not, we're sure proud to have you as our 2023 Ohio Superintendent of the Year.
Didn't know this was coming. Always like surprises. So, from the Ohio Senate, a resolution by Senator Huffman honoring Dr. Elizabeth Lally as the 2023 Ohio Superintendent of the Year. Whereas the members of the Senate of the 134th General Assembly of Ohio are pleased to pay tribute to Dr. Elizabeth Lally on being recognized by the Buckeye Association of School Administrators as the 2023 Ohio Superintendent of the Year. And whereas the superintendent of the Dayton Public School District, Elizabeth Lally, has brought a wealth of experience to her position from her previous professional endeavors, which include teaching in the classroom and providing leadership and guidance as a principal, a curriculum director, and a superintendent. Since taking the helm at DPS in 2018, she has performed her duties with exceptional competence and built a tremendous relationship with the community. And whereas the enthusiasm and commitment she has shown through her service have gained Elizabeth Lally the esteem and admiration of all those with whom she has been associated. She has benefited the Dayton Public School District through initiatives that have closed student achievement gaps in elementary schools and improved the overall report card rating. And with resolve, she has reinstated band and choir programs, increased the number of neighborhood school centers, and opened the first school-based health center, all of which have promoted the success of area youth. And whereas Elizabeth Lally has the satisfaction of knowing that she has been instrumental to the record of excellence that has been celebrated by the Dayton Public School District. Her stewardship, vision, and integrity will stand as a hallmark for others to emulate, and she has certainly distinguished herself as an outstanding advocate for Ohio students. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Senate of the 134th General Assembly of Ohio, in adopting this resolution, applaud Dr. Elizabeth Lally on this well-deserved distinction and look with optimism to a future that will thrive as a result of her dedicated efforts to uplift the next generation of Ohio citizens. And be it further resolved that the clerk of the Senate transmit a duly authenticated copy of this resolution to Dr. Elizabeth Lally. Signed, Vincent Kieran, Clerk of the Senate, Senator Matt Huffman, and Senator Stephen Huffman.
Dr. Lally, it was with great pleasure that a recommendation was put together for you because of all the hard work you have done in this district. The recommendation that I submitted was on behalf of all the administrators here in the district, and it reflects our appreciation for all of the work, your commitment, your care, and just the fact that you, in the statement that I put, that a rising tide lifts all boats, that you are a rising tide, and you have lifted every boat here in the district. So on behalf of all the administrators here in the district, we want to say thank you and congratulations on being the Ohio Superintendent of the Year.
in the picture, come on.
They're still filing it up top, but now we can see it. All right, everyone look over here. 1, 2, 3. All right, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Ms. Ryan.
We will continue with our review session. So, I will go to you, Dr. Lally.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend the approval of the HR agenda. It is for a vote tonight, so like to ask Chief Harmon to come up in case there are any questions that you might have before you vote.
Okay. I move to accept Superintendent Recommendation A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on the, Mr. Lacy?
So why is it a vote tonight as opposed?
It's in order to get them for the payroll cycle.
Yeah, it's ultimately just to get folks in. Nothing, I don't think you'll find anything particularly interesting on there, but certainly if you have questions.
Any questions? Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple questions. First question is, I do see that we've been just talking about it for about a month and a half about some supports, and I see now that we do have student success coaches. If someone could share with us and the community what a student success coach responsibility is, I would greatly appreciate it.
The student success coaches are to support our truancy work that we're trying to do and to hopefully reduce the chronic absenteeism that we have by building relationships with students and supporting them socially, emotionally, and academically through the school year. They will be working with the attendance teams in the building, but also meeting with students, making sure that any barriers to student attendance are removed. They'll collect the data, they'll do home visits if necessary, and they'll do a tracking of students, making sure that our students get to school and anything that's stopping them from getting to school hopefully be removed.
Thank you, Dr. Lally. Thank you, Mr. President. If I may ask my second question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. And please, I see there's a lot of supplemental contracts, and please, please, please excuse my not knowing. When I was growing up, everybody was responsible for dismissal, but I see one of the supplementals is dismissal personnel. Is that a responsibility of just a certain group of individuals at the school? Can somebody please explain to me what a dismissal personnel is that requires a supplemental contract?
We have people that stay extra time after the school day is over, perhaps because a parent hasn't picked up children or buses are late, potentially. So they help with the dismissal and they make sure that they're out there monitoring traffic, et cetera.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin?
Yes, couple. Can someone explain to me what a mobile health unit driver is and what is the actual mobile health unit, what they do?
Yes, we have a mobile health unit for asthma, and the driver is the one who takes the unit to different schools to support the work of the mobile health unit. There's a nurse that's on there. So it's almost like a clinic that travels to our buildings and works with students who have asthma.
Thank you. Second question, line 24, it's an adjunct for music. It looks like band at Dunbar and Thurgood, but it says 7th through 12th, and neither of those schools have 7th or 8th graders.
The adjunct for Thurgood and Dunbar should say 9 through 12.
Second. And my next question, can you tell me where we are? I see that there are about 10 supplemental contracts in the athletic department. Are we fully staffed in all the sports that we're offering in the winter?
I do have that. Dr. Lally, if you want me to speak to it.
Yes, Chief.
We do have now 4 bowling coaches in place for 4 buildings, Ponitz, Stivers, Dunbar, and Thurgood. We now have wrestling coaches in place at all 6 high schools, with 2 high schools having enough female students for a separate girls team. We have swim coaches in place for 2 buildings, Ponitz and Stivers. Students from Meadowdale have been participating as well. There are no vacancies at Belmont, Dunbar, Meadowdale, Ponitz, Stivers, Thurgood, Belmont Middle School, E.J. Brown, Stivers Middle School. There is a cheer position open at Wright Brothers, but there's an interview in place for that, so hopefully that'll also be locked up and closed out. And Wagaman has also no vacant positions. So beyond that cheer one, we would have every single thing filled. And I'll say thank you to the athletic department for providing that information to me. That is, I'm reading off someone else's report, so.
I love it. Look at you just spitting it out there. That's good. Quick question for, I think, the business manager. Can you tell me where we are with our bus driver, our school driver ratio of how many vacancies we have and what we're still in need for?
I don't have the exact number of vacancies. I can get that to you when the night's over.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Lacy?
And green, the green highlight, is there a key for that?
Yeah, so we added some additional folks because we got answers back from principals today, added since those things went live on Friday. Okay. So, and I did share with Dr. Lally If that's something the board is uncomfortable, although I would prefer that you are comfortable with it, if you're uncomfortable voting that tonight, we can push that to next week. But it's just, the information came to us from principals after the agenda went live on Friday. I think it goes at 5:30 maybe. So there's just additional names since that point.
And some of the green is just the dollar amount.
That's correct. A change since
Change in the dollar
Friday.
amount.
Yep.
Okay. That's fine with me. And the very first separation, we have band at the international school? Yes, we do. Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Dr. Goodwin.
Just one more question. How many open band positions do we have in the district?
How many open band positions? I
Yes.
believe that we have 2 long-term subs. Is that correct,
I'm looking. I
Chief?
don't-
All the positions are filled, but
Yeah.
I think 2 of them are filled with long-term
Correct.
subs.
That's- Yeah.
Do we
For
have
band.
band at all the middle schools?
We do.
Okay.
We have a vacant choir position in one of our middle schools, but we're working with Wright State to fill that right now.
That's all right. Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett is not here, Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, sir. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Next recommendation for review only is DEA after July 10th. You'll note the 2 names that are on there.
Any questions? See no questions. Next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Next recommendation are the contracts. There are several on the agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions on contracts? Dr. Goodwin.
Do we have all the locations secured for all the high school proms?
We
And
do
if-
not. They're working on those still.
How many do we have open, do you know? How many do we still need to fill?
I'm sorry.
How many do we have left to fill?
I've only seen, I think I've only seen 2 come through so far.
Okay.
So we have the 4 left.
Any other questions on contracts? Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple questions. This Key Behavior Services LLC, can you tell me what this contract is and how it is supporting the students and staff with OEC?
I'll ask Dr. Burton to come forward and explain that.
We are seeing in the district an increased number of students who are in need of additional behavioral supports beyond the scope and abilities of the staff that we have here in the district, and also individuals who have moved into the district, and based on their IEP, their IEPs have indicated they need such services. And so we needed to contract to add those supports to what's available here in the district.
If I may, Mr. President?
Yes.
How was, and I don't have no knowledge of Key Behavior Services, how was this group selected to provide these services?
So we put an RFP out and solicited a number of companies to see who would be available to provide the services based on the scope that we provided. And then we evaluated those who submitted a proposal, and the team determined that this company was best fitted to provide the services based on the companies that submitted their applications.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Burton.
Thank you. Any other questions on contracts? If there are none, next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
The next recommendation is a placeholder for the DEA contract that will be available for a vote next week when we get that from our attorneys.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Your next
Okay.
recommendation.
Next recommendation is a memorandum of understanding with West Ed and the school district. This is a that virtual reality algebra program that we put in place last year at Thurgood Marshall High School and at Mound Street. And this is putting this, it's the contract to continue this work.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Sampson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Only question I have is that it starts out this MOU is effective as of 8/27. Is there a reason why it's just being placed for consideration of a vote now versus August, September-ish?
I can't answer that. I can find out though and let you know.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions? Next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
Next recommendation is an agreement between Sinclair and Dayton Public Schools for credit and support for our career technical programs. And these credits help the students earn an associate's of art, science, or applied science and technical study, individualized study, or a certificate program. So we pay them for the work that they do with us for those credits.
Thank you. Any questions? If there are no questions, your next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
I'd like to recommend for next week's approval, a change to the administrative DSS salary. All administrators and DSS personnel would receive 3% pickup of the approved retirement system of benefits in 2022-23 effective January 1st, 2023, an additional 3% pickup of appropriate retirement system benefit in 23-24, and a potential additional DEA raise percent towards the pickup of the appropriate retirement system benefit in 24-25. And all active administrators and DSS personnel as of November 15th, 2022 would receive a 3% one-time bonus based on their retirement wages from July 1st through December 31st, 2022. And that's instead of retro into the retirement system, because that's too confusing to try and do that for all the systems that we pay into. This one-time bonus is not subject to retirement withholdings and is not added to the base salary.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? I see no questions. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
Next recommendation is the organizational chart for the school district. It includes the new position of school business manager and the operations underneath the school business manager and transportation.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I see no questions. Does that conclude your recommendations, Dr. Lally?
It does. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Madam Treasurer, your recommendations, please.
Okay. 5-year forecast, it's a placeholder until we finish working on it, but next week it has to be approved. Monthly financial report for October 2022. It's going to be reviewed on Thursday by the Finance Committee, and it will be approved by the board next week. The next one I have is minutes. I have minutes for October 11, 2022 review session and October 18, 2022 business meeting. Purchase requisitions, we have several of them from different departments, and let's look at them, and if you have any questions, we'll answer.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Give a moment to look over the purchase requisitions, and if there are any questions, we can ask them if we look over. Are there any questions? Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last University of Dayton, what research, how is the UD grad students assisting school psych? What is the outcome that we're looking for with this research?
Dr. Burton, could you come and explain?
We currently, like many districts around the country, have a severe shortage of school psychologists. So the university students are really doing some of the testing that they would be allowed to perform, some of the achievement testing to help to defer the caseload for some of the psychologists.
Thank you, Dr. Burton. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Lally, or anyone else that might go down to Dr. Lawrence. If we have, with the Tyler Technologies purchase requisition, if we can get an update on how that's going, any feedback from those that are using it. The ease of service, I know through the last couple of years, we've used different things and trying to work some of that. If we can get an update on how that routing software and that GPS systems are going, especially with us, over the last few years, switching up some of those. And that doesn't have to be today, but if we get some information before next week,
I can do that.
appreciate it, sir. Any other questions? Mr. Lacy?
In the ESC service agreement for Surur Ali, that's not a student, is it? It is a student?
It is a student, yes.
Okay. Do we generally put the names of students in the?
We typically do not. You're
Okay.
correct.
So I mean, could that be just changed to a particular student, I guess?
Any other questions? No further questions. Your next recommendation, Madam Treasurer.
Okay, I have Zen in now from different departments, and let's look at them. If you have any question, we will answer.
Any questions? Dr. Goodwin.
Similar to the request made in the last one, with the final form subscription, can we just get an analysis on how well that program is working for the district? And if it is working well, can I just make the ask that we look into the academic side of it that deals with enrollment, so that now we have systems that are talking together?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. Anyone else? If there are no other questions, your next recommendation, Madam Treasurer.
Okay. I have a resolution to restate the 457 deferred compensation plan. We are reinstating this plan. One, amend to permit repayments to the plan for CARES Act distributions received by the participant in 2020. Two, amended to permit an active employee to make withdrawals at age 59 and a half. Three, to amended to permit an employee under age 59 and a half to make CARES Act withdrawal in 2020 of up to 100,000. Amended to address the Secure Act changes that has a minimum distribution rules apply at age 72 instead of age 70 and a half. Amended to address the Secure Act's modification of the minimum distribution rules that apply with deaths of the participant. Amended to permit plan amendments to sign by the board president or executive director after receiving board approval. 7, loan provisions are modified to permit a participant to take a loan up to 100,000 on or before September 2020, as allowed by the CARES Act. Those are the amendments to the original we had.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. there any questions? Mr. Lacy?
So these are basically just amendments due to the CARES Act?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, this concludes your recommendations, Madam Treasurer.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Moving into new business, we have for a vote. I recommend the approval of the following expense reimbursements, which are corrections to the amounts from the October 11th, 2022 agenda. I couldn't hear you, Ms. Kidd. Okay, so we are then voting on Dr. Goodwine's. We'll do the other one, Vice President's after, okay.
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Are there any questions? If there are no questions on the motion, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwine,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. Next is not for a vote, but is for an out-of-country field trip for Stivers School for the Arts. That will be up for a vote next week, and anyone can read that information there. Want to put that out so you know ahead of next week. If there are any questions? If not, lastly, I will turn the mic over to our Vice President Reiner, for new business C, resolution.
Thank you. I have a resolution to present to the board. I'm going to read through it, and then I will explain a little bit further afterwards. This is a resolution opposing State Board of Education's resolution to support parents, schools, and districts in rejecting harmful, coercive, and burdensome gender identity policies. Whereas the State Board of Education has been considering a vote on the resolution to support parents, schools, and districts in rejecting harmful, coercive, and burdensome gender identity policies, the State BOE resolution. This member proposed resolution attempts to invalidate federal Title IX protections in schools for LGBTQ plus youth, spreads harmful falsehoods about LGBTQ plus people, and advocates that local school districts ignore the law by requiring the state interim superintendent of public instruction to issue a letter to all public schools to view the Title IX changes as unenforceable. And whereas the state BOE resolution requires Ohio schools to report student identities, alternative names, and pronouns to families regardless of possible risk for youth, bans transgender youth from participating in sports or using facilities that align with their gender, and advocates that state lawmakers allocate state taxpayer dollars to pay for any penalties incurred by school districts for ignoring Title IX protections. The state BOE resolution also supports State Attorney General Yost's lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Agriculture that requires schools to accept Title IX changes in order to get federal nutrition funding assistance. And according to research by the Trevor Project, 50% of LGBTQ plus teens between the ages of 13 to 17 have considered suicide, and LGBTQ plus youth who report having at least one accepting adult in their lives were 40% less likely to report a suicide attempt in the last year. And whereas, according to the New York Times, for the first time since the National Assessment of Educational Progress Test began tracking student achievement in the 1970s, 9-year-olds lost ground in math, and scores in reading fell by the largest margin in more than 30 years due to COVID-19 pandemic. And according to the Children's Defense Fund, gun violence has become the leading cause of death for all children and teens ages 1 through 19, surpassing motor vehicle accidents for the first time in history. These are the kinds of issues on which the State Board of Education, state superintendent, and local school districts should be focusing, not stoking culture wars and feeding into political grandstanding, especially on issues which harm children. And whereas this resolution sets several dangerous precedents, it endangers students both socially and emotionally whose home environments may be less than accepting of their gender identity, and simultaneously strains the relationship students have with staff by requiring staff to violate students' wishes and privacy. And it challenges the concept of separation of church and state with such language as, whereas for many parents, the nature of the human person created by God, male and female, is a deeply held religious belief. And whereas the state BOE resolution negates the local authority granted to school districts to create their own policies by purporting to represent all public schools in the support of Ohio Attorney General's lawsuit and by usurping local district decision-making authority. And whereas the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District believes that its schools must be safe, welcoming places for all students, faculty, and staff, The board will not place any of its students, faculty, or staff in danger by proclaiming them less than or forcing them to violate the safe environment that the DPS community has worked so hard to provide. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Dayton City School District that the board opposes and rejects the State Board of Education's resolution to support parents, schools, and districts in rejecting harmful, coercive, and burdensome gender identity policies, and implores the members of the State Board of Education to vote no on such resolution. This resolution is being introduced, and I would like to have it go forward for a vote tonight. Particularly in matter of timing, the State Board of Education will be meeting next Monday to discuss and possibly vote on this resolution. And waiting until the business meeting next Tuesday would put that meeting after the State Board. I think it's important to pass this and send it on to our State Board of Education and let them know how we feel here in Dayton. I need to acknowledge with gratitude, the majority of this was not written by me. It was written by a colleague whom I deeply admire, Board Member Barnes in Toledo, who has been doing the work protecting and advocating for Q+ students for a very long time. It is so important that we recognize the fullness of our children and students and staff. As I said last month, denying that children are LGBTQ+ does not make them go away. It only makes them less safe, and it only puts them under further risk of suicide. There are so many inaccuracies in the resolution that was introduced in the State Board of Education. I know they've discussed it at several meetings and tabled it a couple times and made a number of amendments to it. They do not understand the difference between sex and gender. There's a very big difference between that. Sex assigned at birth is not as simple as XX and XY, and those board members who think it is should probably go back to high school biology. It is much more complex than that. These students are full human beings, and we are here to teach them and to protect them. And the State Board resolution does the opposite of that. It puts children at risk. And it is fueled by inaccuracies. It is fueled by ridiculous rumors that schools put litter boxes in bathrooms, which is so unfathomably stupid. I cannot even express it. I want the people who are in charge of school districts and the people who serve on the State Board of Education to listen to mental health professionals, to listen to people, to educators who know what's actually happening in the classroom, who know what's best for students, who will do everything that they can to support students and advocate for them, rather than using students as an opportunity to score political points. That's not okay. That's not what we do. That is not the work that we do. I would welcome any questions that the board has about this. I want to point out that there is a paragraph here that was not in the version that I sent the board last week, and it's the paragraph that includes the information about the Trevor Project, how 50% of Q+ teens between the ages of 13 and 17 have considered suicide, and Q+ youth who report having at least one accepting adult in their lives are 40% likely to report a suicide attempt in the last year. I will personally say that I am lucky that the queer person in my life who considered suicide is still with us. So this is personal. I would move to adopt this resolution, and then after that, I would be happy to answer any questions by board members.
I second.
It's been moved in second. Any questions? Mr. Lacy?
I just want to say I appreciate putting the resolution together, and thank you to, if you could repeat the name of the board member from Toledo. Is it Toledo Public?
Yes, board member Sheena Barnes.
Thank you. And thank you for putting this together.
Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin?
Yes, I appreciate the work on the resolution. I do have some question as not only a board member that is queer and a person of color. that lives in a community where this isn't just a black and white issue in that sense, as it's not just as clear cut. Has anyone on this board had or hosted community conversations to really listen to our community and really use this educational space to talk about some of I mean, there are several challenges presented in this, but have we done any of those type of listening sessions, discussions, debates to talk with individuals in our community?
Board Member Dr. Goodwine, this district has not yet done that. I have attended, I've been invited and attended a couple different groups. There is a GSA group at Stivers that invited me in. They had questions about bathrooms and about their rights as Q+ individuals. I reached out to a number of organizations about this resolution and got some feedback. But I think that that is a very good question, and I think that that would be beneficial for our district, and beneficial to parents who might have a lot of questions about what things like this mean. I would welcome any collaboration that you would like to do on moving that forward, and if you would like to take the lead, I would follow you on that.
I'm not interested in the lead in it because, again, this is a life I already lead, but I do encourage that for non-queer people. I do have a question, Dr. Lally. Do we have anything in our curriculum on gender and sexuality?
No. If the topic comes up, it's discussed, in a health class or something like that, but nothing that's very specific that talks through anything like that.
Do we have any PDs or anything like that? I know I asked when the Males of Color program, our Office of Inclusion was here, that some more of this type of conversation went to learning that. Do we have any PDs or anything like that? So do we do anything for our actual staff on this topic? And there's several topics that are in this resolution.
By building, there have been some PDs, but not as a district. We have not done anything, district-wide, like we do some other PDs for gradual release or things like that. Nothing district-wide, but there have been some localized building PDs that have occurred.
All right, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no questions, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwine,
No.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
5 yeses, 1 no.
Thank you. And before we end new business, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Lally, see if she had any statements.
Thank you, Mr. President Smith. I just wanted to thank everyone for showing up and supporting this opportunity tonight for me to receive this award. I've said it before to people, a superintendent doesn't receive an award without everybody who works with that superintendent also having part of that award. The staff that works here with me, the administrators that work here with me, the Board of Education, the parents and the community are all part of that award. It's not something that you earn as an individual because you don't do all the work and you don't do everything that earns the award. So I just wanted to thank everyone who's been a part of this career that I've had here in Dayton Public Schools. It has been a very challenging time here in the Dayton Public Schools, but it's been the best of my career. And someone said, "You really are going to say that out loud?" And I said, "Yes," because I've been in a couple of districts that have been relatively easy districts, but this has been the best district my favorite place to be, because of the challenges, because of the work we've been able to do for the students and the community here. So I want to thank everyone for their support tonight. I want to thank BASA for the award, and I want to thank my family who was here in the front row supporting me. Didn't get to introduce them, but my family was sitting there in the front row, and I want to thank them. I want to thank the previous Board of Education and this Board of Education for your help and your support. So thank you to everyone, and to Sharice and Sarita, thank you for setting up the reception and making sure that everything was taken care of tonight in such a perfect way, as usual. So thank you to everyone. So appreciate that, Mr. President.
Appreciate you, Dr. Lally. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 121.T2G2 of the Ohio Revised Code, I move that this board go into executive session. This meeting is being held to consider the compensation of a public employee, as well as confer with an attorney involving pending or imminent court action. Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Any questions? See there are none. May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reiner,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
6 yeses.
Thank you. We shall retire to the board conference room.